congratulations on your award this morning. I'm going to talk about a project that I've used in bioinformatics class, and one of the learning techniques that I use is called writing to learn, and I learned a lot about this technique through workshops that were offered by Sherry Graydon, an English professor at my university, and she is or was the director of the Center for Writing Excellence, and I took workshops from her about 10 years ago, but I still remember this quote. It's really one of my favorite quotes from Sherry. To write about a subject is to think about the subject, and with that paradigm of learning in mind, I want to talk about a specific project, which is using Wikipedia to help students to learn about bioinformatics, and also to get some other benefits as well, which I'll talk about. So students in actually a one semester data mining bioinformatics course were asked to find a Wikipedia article that's in the field of computational biology and to enhance the article significantly. And I used to have the students just do step one, but this year I decided to add step two as well, and maybe make it more interesting. So I also required them to enter the article into the Wikipedia competition, which is organized by ISCB and Wiki Project Bio. And the winners of this year's project competition will actually be announced tomorrow at the town hall meeting. So just a brief overview of what is the Bio Wiki competition, in case you're not familiar with it. As we know, most of us look in Wikipedia when we want to learn about a topic for the first time. However, many articles, including computational biology articles, are outdated, incomplete. So the competition was started in 2012, and it's only open to students and trainees, and it's to encourage updating of the articles, or development of the articles that haven't yet been developed. There are cash prizes, and we've had about 150 entries in competition over 5 years. And in 2015, in addition to Wikipedia articles, a Wikidata component was added to the competition. So you can enter entries such as this one by Alfonso Valencia regarding a particular protein if you want to compete in this way. So for my project, what was I trying to accomplish in terms of learning using this idea? So I wanted each student to learn about a specific bioinformatics related topic. I wanted them to learn to critique articles. If you're going to improve an article, you have to think about what can I add to this, what's missing. I wanted them to enhance their writing skills, become aware of available resources, contribute to our community, and I wanted them to connect with the international computational biology community. Most of the students aren't aware of ISCB. So I put together this assignment, and this is a summary of the handout that I gave them. The students were required to make 3 presentations. The initial presentation was just their idea. Which Wikipedia article do you want to modify, and why? Then a few weeks later, they would present a first draft of the page, and then they present their second draft. And they were allowed to have 10 minutes, 5 minutes for presenting their idea, and then 5 minutes for discussion. And they were told that their assignments would be graded on clarity of writing, depth of knowledge, and quality of figures and photos. So I gave the students the definition of the challenge problem, which is freely available on Wikipedia, of course, training materials, which are on Wikipedia, rules and regulations, and the judging criteria. And I basically just said, go read it, figure it out, and do it. So the challenge definition, select an article you intend to work on, and then go to the Wikipedia bio competition page and actually indicate that you're selecting that article. So no one else can select that article. You have exclusive access to that for the competition. There are about 1,200, although I heard recently there are around 1,600, so somewhere between 1,200 to 1,600 articles on Wikipedia that have been categorized as computational biology. Currently, there's just a list of those articles, but we're talking about adding more information along with those articles to help the students to select ones that need improvement. They're graded on like a 4 or 5 scale grading system, and so students might want to select ones that are very popular and also need a lot of improvement. So some of those metrics are going to be added for next year's competition. Oh, and the competition organizers are strongly encouraging non-English language articles. Most of the submissions are in English. And there are some training materials available. Students are encouraged to read the 10 simple rules for editing Wikipedia. And there's also the Wikipedia editing training course. And there are various rules and regulations. Individuals can participate, groups can participate. And the initial screening of the articles is done by the Student Council of ISCB, and they select the 6 best articles, which are then passed on to the judging committees. And of course, there are all kinds of rules like obey copyrights, don't plagiarize, and this was really great because I didn't have to check for plagiarism. The editors of Wikipedia are very, very on the ball, as I'll talk about in a minute. So again, the judging criteria that they were given: clarity, depth of knowledge, quality of figures. And the awards, I hope that this will provide some incentive to my students. The winner gets $500, and second place $250, third place $150, and a 1-year ISCB membership. So these are the articles that my students produce. A DO PhD student who works in the area of diabetic retinopathy liked the article about computer-aided diagnosis, and he enhanced the section on diabetic retinopathy, adding a literature review, links, and images. This is one of the images from his article. There's a master's student in molecular and cellular biology. She edited the article on adipose tissue and added a section on genomics and bioinformatics tools to study the browning of fat cells. And this was her thesis area, and it helped her to work on her lit review. She found some nice images. I really pushed the students to add images because I served on the judging panel for this competition the year before, and I noticed that the images really impacted the judges. So she found some nice images, but the editors removed them. Kind of frustrating, but hey, that's how it is. This was a really nice, enjoyable article. It was about Margaret Dayhoff, and in the bioinformatics tools course, which I also teach, we learn all about Dayhoff's matrices and all of her work. And I learned a lot about Margaret herself through this project. The student is an undergrad pre-med major, and she enhanced the bio and talked about the family life. An interesting thing I learned about Margaret was that her husband is a great cook. And I said, well, why don't you add one of his recipes to the page? She didn't take my suggestion. But anyway, Dayhoff is a role model and an inspiration to the student. And it was really awesome to see her really studying Margaret's life. And she actually contacted one of Margaret's daughters, who's also a professor, and got some information from her daughter. And actually her daughter, I noticed recently as I was gathering the materials for this slide, her daughter had edited the page, correcting some information, which is really, really neat. So the human interest element made this a really interesting and meaningful project, I think, for everybody in the class. SSRI, this is a neuroscience PhD student. She explored bioinformatics methods relating to her research topic and got some additional ideas for how to enhance her dissertation work. Again, there was an issue where she and the editors were sort of butting heads and going back and forth about the source of some of the material that she was including. The editor ultimately won. This was a new student in bioinformatics, a new PhD student who really didn't know much about the field, and she just did a basic article about sequence analysis to learn about, for her, a new area. This guy, he updated the Smith-Waterman algorithm article, which was horribly written. he really struggled trying to understand this algorithm in another course that he took from me. And he thought, you know, that was a horrible article. I'm going to update it, and I'm going to write it in Chinese. So he did major rewriting of this article. Explanations, figures, even animations. Really great examples. He added pseudocode, and he would show his pages in English and Chinese. Fortunately, my TA for the class was also Chinese, and she assured me that it wasn't just gibberish that he was putting up there, but I just have to trust her judgment. So I've actually invited a guest to come up and just give the perspectives of the judging panel. Alistair, would you mind coming up? So Alistair Patrick is the chair of the Wikipedia competition, and I had to recuse myself from the judging panel this year, obviously, so I don't know what they talked about, and I'm going to hear about it for the first time.
Thanks, Lonnie. So as Lonnie mentioned, I've been the chair of the judging panel this year, taking over a role that was previously done by Alex Bateman, who's done a great job over the past couple of years. So just to introduce the panel that we have, we'll have, as well as myself, we've got Thomas DiDomenico, Janet Kelso. From the Education Committee, we have Anne Mayer and Mark Hawley. I don't know if Mark's here today. But these were guys that volunteered last year. It was really interesting in the competition and we wanted to help out. We also have Danny Beechin, and again, I'm not sure if Danny is here, but he's been really instrumental in promoting the PLOS topic pages, which is a collaboration between PLOS computational biology and Wikipedia. So the judging procedures, due to time constraints this year, we didn't involve the student council. We just sent the judges the list of entries. That's something that we're hoping to change next year. We think it's a really good idea to get students involved in critiquing the articles that have been improved. Various discussion points. As Lonnie mentioned, the main thing that we were looking for was the clarity of the article. Because Wikipedia is a collaborative effort, it's quite easy for one person to add a sentence, another person kind of edits that sentence, someone else adds something else, you've got a paragraph or something else, so it can become a little bit fragmented. So what we're looking for was really a clear voice throughout the article. I think that really helps when people are coming to something for the first time. That was really the main thing about these top 3 articles, and I'm very glad to see that the judging panel were almost unanimous in picking these 3 articles as the best entries from this year. The other thing I wanted to mention regarding the reasons for the selection was just the improvements from the article, some of which are very small indeed. So to have a greater to have a lot more information in these articles is really helpful. So with that, onto the winning articles. So congratulations to the winners, and I do urge you to have a look at these and see the improvements. The winning article in particular, I think, was very well done, very clear, certainly a good improvement on the article that was there before. So Gary's article on this with working an algorithm for both the English and Chinese language Wikipedias we thought was fantastic. It's a worthy win. Charlotte's article on Margaret with the Dayhoff and Nicole's article with the improvements to the PFAM article, we thought were all very worthy winners. These students don't think Yadi can make it. I think Yadi had these issues, but the other 2 students will be receiving their awards tomorrow at the town hall, and I'd urge you to go along to that and congratulate them on their awards. So with that, I'd like to just pass back over to Lonnie, who's going to talk about some of the lessons that he's learned from do this in this classroom.
Thanks for letting me put you on the spot to come up here. And when Fran invited me to do this presentation, I had no idea how my students would do. I thought I might be embarrassed, but I'm really proud of them. They did this work. And yeah, unfortunately, Dottie had visa issues and couldn't be here. But another nice thing about the competition is ISCB provides some travel support to help the winners of this to come to receive their awards. So I learned a lot as I reflected on this and putting together this presentation. The students did engage deeply, so the writing to learn really did help them to think deeply about their topic. And the community resources were definitely improved, and they got practice in critiquing and developing scientific writing. And I think that the 3 iterations really did help. I saw major improvements each time, and by making them stand up in front of the class and present their articles and their ideas, it put more pressure on them to do the job. And they got some experience interacting with editors. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes the text was removed entirely. If you're going to do this as a project, make sure that the students submit all the edits that they made to you, as well as putting them online. And the first 2 iterations, I noticed that the other students in the class were just, checking their Facebook pages and doing whatever. And so I thought of a way to get them engaged was to give them each a little slip of paper and say, I want you to evaluate these presentations. And here are the 3 criteria: clarity, quality of writing, and images. And give them a score on the scale of 1 to 10. And I collected those and gave them to the individual authors. And I don't really know what the scores were, but if they were weak in certain areas. And I did notice that the students were then starting to give feedback and ask questions, and so that seemed to work well. And I think that the prizes increased the incentive, but I'm not sure they really believed me when I said, I think you guys could actually win this competition. They're like, yeah, Welch, sure. And I think it's really cool that the students have produced a product that is actually out there. So I plan to continue refining and using this in my classes, and I'm also thinking of having my grad students each write an article every year relating to their thesis topic, and with new students, it's a good way to evaluate their writing abilities to see, do I really want to be their thesis advisor or not? And I would like to have us as a community think about, could we create a community of educators who want to use this competition and continue developing ways that we can effectively use this to help our students to learn about bioinformatics. And I just want to encourage people to submit. The submissions for this year's competition opened, I believe, yesterday, and you have until the end of this calendar year. So if you'd like to use this as a project with your students in the fall, you have until December 31st. You can Google this for more information. The competition is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. There is an edit-a-thon tomorrow. Alistair and a colleague are running this, so if you want to learn how to edit these pages, go to the edit-a-thon. And that's tomorrow in room 2.1. And just drop in whenever it's convenient. Oh, and there will be prizes and snacks? Yeah, okay. So I'm just encouraging students, please enter the competition. Faculty and professionals, I think there's a lot of room for help in organizing and judging these, and I know there's a lot of room for help. And please encourage your students to participate and use this as a learning tool. And there's where you can go for more information. Are there any questions, comments?
So this seems like the new way of doing these term cases that you get to share with other people. So I think that's really nice. Because I think back on a project that I had in my students in the genetics field, which was taking a disease and trying to understand the history of how we got to at that point in the map. So, but this is nice in that they can share their work. So how do you monitor or encourage them? What sources do they use to get the material to write their article, because that's really important.
So did they use Wikipedia or did they?
Exactly, and did they use the National Enquirer?
Right, right. Yeah, so that was part of the critique that would be given, when they would make their presentations. And I really don't ever remember that being an issue, that somebody was using sources that weren't good. And I haven't served on the editorial side of Wikipedia, so I want to ask Alistair, is that something that the editors check as they're reviewing these things?
Yes, generally, people will edit on things from the source.
Yeah, and quality of sourcing is considered as well.
Yeah.
So National Enquirer would be, for a scientific article, I mean, in some cases that might possibly be appropriate depending on, what you're writing. If you're writing an article about fake news, exactly, here's instance number one.
So you had said that you were going to talk about how Wikipedia looks for filtering, right? Did I miss it, or did you want to?
Oh, I was just gonna talk about my experiences and how that impacted this project. So my students had their text removed several times, and they were pulling it from sources that the Wikipedia editor said you're not permitted to use that as a source, that you have to develop your own original text for that. And Alistair, do you have anything to add to that?
Again, some things get monitored semi-automatically. So things that are paraphrased or too close to the source material will be removed. So it's a process of, as with anything, scraping the source and finding new words to that translation.
Is George still here?
I used the transport server. I used the Wikipedia thing before I'm keeping myself, because I threw out what I had previously, which was, I don't know, not so useful, and structured the lecture on Wikipedia, because I know that the students are going to go there anyhow. So the more I can keep in shape with what's going on there, the easier it is for them to handle the questions. So it's really a good article.
Oh, so you actually used Yadi Zhao's article?
Follow the article also in the mainstream students.
Wow, I will let him know that. Thanks for the encouragement. He's an outstanding teacher. When he was doing one of his presentations, I said, Yadi, you should become a professor. You are a really good teacher. So yeah, thank you for saying that. And I sort of feel like you that I used to tell students, Wikipedia is not a good source. Don't use that. Don't even talk to me about it. But if you can't beat them, join them.
Recording when the speaker starts speaking or when the person introducing the speaker.
Oh, awesome.
You could catch the introduction, yeah. And I actually record the question and answer as well.
That also do.
Yeah. Most important thing is start before the speaker starts. Yeah.
They are very strict, and I think one of the reasons that Charlotte contacted Margaret Dayhoff's daughter was trying to get a photo that she would actually be permitted to use. And they're extremely strict. So if you're, and again, Alistair, you're probably more of an expert on the editor side of it.
Yeah, it's a case of getting the right licenses from the students. So I think figures introduced from Oxford okay. Various photos that have been taken Creative Commons license are okay. But these are bits of better integrating the video as the main copyright or the main one to present CC license, which is okay. So it's all fits with the project.
Is it good resources for students too?
So I think this material, this text that I have here was pulled straight from the competition website, and it has links on it, and I'm assuming that if you follow those, that it will give the full details of. And Alistair and I were talking as we were putting together these slides. I did not spend any time at all teaching my students, and the questions that are coming up now are the kinds of things that I think I'll actually add into. So I need to learn more about these things as well, so that I can guide them.
What's been because, they are choosing a live web-page article to modify, and they're modifying it, and the editors are overwriting some of their modifications.
And others may be modifying it too.
Right, and so, well, nobody else in the competition.
Nobody else in the competition, but you and I, anyone else could edit it, yeah.
So what has been the students' reaction to, that sort of editorial oversight, and like, they contribute something, like, what's been their response to the editorial process?
It was very frustrating to them. It really raised their stress level. Students like to have a very well-defined task, and I know when I've completed it. And honestly, I took some flack on my evaluations for the course, but I'm doing it again because I know that it worked. And students don't always like things that are hard and that really push them and make them learn. But this is how it is. So, yeah, Kat.
This is a comment rather than a question, but that in real life, this is excellent, because this is exactly what they're going to have to go through in the competition.
That's right.
And you're preparing them for it, which I think that's a really good thing.
They didn't. I agree, but in their minds, they didn't sign up for that when they signed up for a data mining class. But that is what it is. So.
You said you encourage the other languages than English. So how does this work in practice? Because A, you're supposed to be using the local languages, and B, different Wikipedia languages have different cultures. Those Wikipedia don't come from the same as the English or the French Wikipedia, and their way of accepting changes and how they treat newcomers.
So there are two perspectives. One is mine as a teacher. I unfortunately had a Chinese-speaking TA, and there were 3 Chinese articles, actually 2 Chinese articles, and there was one in Spanish. And I actually speak Spanish, so I can fortunately critique that one and see that it wasn't gibberish. But I also relied on the editors, and so from the Wikipedia and the judging side, Alistair.
Yeah, I mean, we can't really easily accept all languages with the proviso that someone on the judging panel has to either speak that language or get a review from someone who speaks that language to say, this is legit, this is real information.
I think I had 25 minutes, right? So I think I'm over. We're fine. Okay. So if there's one more question. All right.
So he was writing an article about a Wikipedia article about a tool that was developed at Whitehead, a card scan. And I believe what happened is that he was not an author on the paper that the professor had written about this target scan, about some methodology. And he got into problems with plagiarism. People thought that a Wikipedia copy was plagiarizing. And it got worked out because it was all legit, but it was sort of a caveat that you can run into.
Yeah, and I had one of
It's good to know, because then you're really looking at what somebody is looking for.
I was impressed with the level of scrutiny, and often within an hour of them posting the materials, it would be taken down or majorly edited. And so it's actually much more credible than I thought. Just an example of what you experienced, Fran. I had a student write an article about the Great Lakes Bioinformatics Conference and the history of that and where it was held and who organized it and so on. Wikipedia would not let her publish that. They said, you don't have any authority to write about this topic. And at that time, I wasn't having students do it as the competition. It was just an exercise. But if I would have gone and I would have had to go and fight with the editors and say, no, it's legit. I'm asking her to do this, and it's for this purpose. And anyway, you will run into that kind of thing, I think, often. So, but this is editing existing articles for this competition, so you don't have to worry about just creating it from scratch and having to fight for that you have the authority to write that article. So. All right, thank you. Oh.
It has to do with
have not looked into that. I would imagine that's the case, yeah. Okay.
I'm within this very conference center at the FLEX meeting. I learned yesterday a fantastic presentation from Charles University, and I'm an ISCB student at the thank you for joining us.
I was one of the 4 great students had to publicly audit for Indigenous people in Canada, and they had to basically audit and hold us accountable for our participants on Wikipedia.
It's a great learning paradigm, just a great service to the community. People do use it a lot, so let's make it as good as we can make it. Thank you.